I would say get a little booklet and write down the coincidences that have happened in your life as proof that the oneness is working behind the scenes anonymously. So you've thought of Linda and she suddenly telephoned you and said, "How are you, honey?" And you hadn't heard from her for a year. Or you know, you thought of Kat, but you went to school with him and then you found him on a radio show or something. And everybody's got these woo-woo, no moments in their life, which is the oneness talking to them all the time. And I would say ask for proof, ask for signs, ask for the oneness to come into your life when you lose heart, and be demanding of it. And like in Jerry Seinfeld, when they go, "What do you want?" and just be like a New Yorker. You know, they're so demanding, New Yorkers. I love them. And I've had a lot to do with New York City and love it. And there's a resilience and a strength and an in-your-face rudeness that British people don't have. But it's lovely. But be like a New Yorker and say, "All right, show up. You know, everyone's talking about you, oneness. Fucking come here and be one with me." You know, like, ask for it. That's what I'd say. Because the universe responds to being asked, and it wants to be asked, and it's ever awake and ever present, you know.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again here on Third Eye Salon. Today, we have with us the handsome, charming, heart-centered, loving, wonderful David Norman. Hey, David.
Hi, Kat. So good to be with you and Linda. Hi, everybody.
Thank you. And of course, we have my bestie, psychic and conscious business coach, Linda Coulter-Burge.
Hi, everyone. So happy that we have David here to just reflect and share his awakening and how that's reflected in his life.
Absolutely. And so today, in terms of how we're going to be opening up the veil and taking a fresh look between the veils, what we're looking at is what it means to be a fifth dimensional person living in a third dimensional world. And what does that mean? I think we all have kind of do people who are on their path have an understanding of that? Maybe this is the first time you've heard that language, 5D versus 3D. When I think of 5D, I think my higher self that's already living in the state of connectedness, and I want to bring that higher self into my personal experience and have that expression through my life. But since we're talking with David, we kind of really want to ask David, we'll crack the question open. What does 5D mean to you, David? And what does living 5D mean to you versus 3D? And then we're going to get into your transformation story, because we're going to make you crack that nut and give us the juicy details about that. David Norman incarnated in London, England in 1963, born the fifth in a line of a succession of pearl dealers dating back to the early 1830s. Now living in Sydney, Australia, David continues his family's trade to this day, primarily selling on US and Australian TV. However, it was at the tender age of 22 that David experienced his spiritual awakening. Inexplicably, David woke up to a new version of himself that he'd never known or experienced before. Since that moment, David has been on a metaphysical journey for the last 35 years. He credits Wayne Dyer, Shakti Gawain, Carol Mace, Paramahansa Yogananda. Did I say that close enough? There he is.
Yes.
Say his name first, David.
Paramahansa Yogananda.
I was so close. And Michael Singer as some of his greatest teachers. David has learned how to live a fifth dimensional life while working in the very third dimensional corporate world, and joyfully inspires others who seek to do the same. Continuing to recognize and embrace his galactic consciousness, David now leads a Palladian awakening group to further explore and experience the spiritual ascension process as it is currently unfolding on the planet. David's mission is to support others in their own awakening process by sharing his wonderful pearls of love and wisdom with humor and a big open heart, which is, there they are, gorgeous. Can you show them and say something so that way it pops you onto the screen?
Oh, well, these are beautiful Tahitian pearls and Keshi pearls. And this year I kind of felt directed to wear them every now and again, like when meditating or just to get pearl essence and pearl energy. So that's me being a pearl dealer, and we can all wear pearls. Yeah.
You know, because those have a masculine energy to them. It's funny because I always think of pearls as being, you know, it's a feminine energy, it's aquatic energy, but that has a totally masculine vibe to it as I tune into it.
And there's a big oyster hiding behind Linda, or kind of reaching out. There's a big pearl next to you of consciousness.
Yes.
And oysters
Yes.
are so prehistoric in many ways. But they are male and female, apparently. They're hermaphroditic. And it is quite a miracle that you put a nucleus of a round ball made from a shell from the Mississippi River, actually, into a host oyster, and it makes a pearl. And it's a good metaphor for life. It's irritated by this foreign thing, so it covers it in what's called the pearl sac, and then it layers nacre concentrically around and around. And they found that a year in Japan for Japanese pearls, and 2 years in Australia and other countries where the oysters are bigger, is the optimum time to leave the oyster underwater. But then a lot of surfers wear pearls, actually. They wear rubber bracelets with pearls on. And it's true that pearls are sort of symbolic of the divine feminine, I think, but they are quite masculine too, and can be.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And recently I had the great honor of being invited to Zane Daniels' 5D into 3D higher consciousness seminar, and it was like the first time I'd actually spoken. But all my life, psychics have said to me, you'll speak before big audiences one day. And I've always been to those seminars with people like Wayne Dyer and Carolyn Mace and and Shakti Gawain and all the big stars, and Deepak Chopra and so on. And when I've seen the mic, I've always thought, oh, I could do that, but I don't actually know what I'd say. But when I was 25, I'd always wanted to be an actor, and I lost my visa to live in Australia. So I went back to London, and it took nearly 2 years to get a new visa to come back to Australia. So they were very strict in those days. And I was 25, and the friend said, why don't you just go to acting school? You've got the time. So I did, and we did the play A Midsummer Night's Dream as our graduating play. And I got cast as Oberon, King of the Fairies. And the night before the performance, I said, I had this dream. I saw this really bright light that was God. And I said, oh, I'm a bit scared about the performance. And the light said, actually, you bring your body, we'll do the acting. And you just sort of surrender and we'll act through you. And when the first line of that play for Oberon, he sees his wife Titania, and he says, ill met by moonlight, proud Titania. So I was all trying to be all Shakespearean, saying, ill met by moonlight, proud Titania. And then I suddenly had this remembrance of the dream and thought, don't overact, just call them in. And I don't know who I was calling in, but I kind of Grace or God and said, all right, boys, you do the acting. And it was amazing. And then after the performance, everyone said to me, God, that was absolutely fantastic. You were amazing. And I knew it wasn't really me. And my best friend is an actor, Jasper Britton. He's like the number 1 or number 2 in the Royal Shakespeare Company in England. And we went to boarding school together, and we're still the bestest of friends. And he really was a brilliant actor at school. But I wanted people to like me and love me. And that's why I wanted to be on the stage in a way. And when I went to sleep that night, I realized I don't want to be an actor. I want to be in the pearl business, And whatever 5D is, I think it's like, it's what happens in the dream state where we go to this sort of higher place of learning. And there's a whole lot of grace up there and a whole lot of unity consciousness where everything is the oneness. Whereas back on Earth in 3D, it's a whole world of duality. And, when you go to the movies, there's goodies and baddies. And in the US election, it's like the good versus the bad. Or it's like we're all from two places. And cowboys and Indians and, Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. And there's this massive amount of the way it's set up here. So it's obviously meant to be like this, of polarity in the system. And I think in 5D land, or 5D world, I think there's a lot more unity, and there's oneness, and there's a lot of grace, and there's a lot of higher love. so it's much less fearful, if not fearful at all. And we were talking before we started about whales, and I've been told whales are in 5D all the time, and they are just pure consciousness traveling around on the planet, seeding energy and having a nice time and communicating with Gaia and Mother Gaia and us. And we were talking about how excited we get when we're near a whale. And Linda, you spoke about the manatee, how it was your highest experience with an animal was being with the manatees. And I think that whatever 5D is sort of a super conscious state, and it's kind of coming in more and more this year. I think this year, whenever I go to sleep, I seem to have these galactic dreams, and I seem to wake up saying mantras like "There is only one of us." And when I feel like I'm in duality or two-ness, if that's a word, I can invent one, I guess. I say to myself, or when I'm feeling fear or seeing polarity, I inside kind of seem to silently chant, "There is only one of us. There is only one of us. There is only one of us." And then I kind of remember who we really are. But the game here is to forget and then really remember, I think, the game on Earth. So that's my sort of 5D into 3D spiel.
That was cram-packed. Linda, hop in. I know you got something.
Oh, I just had this image of pearls, and how many of those layers are brought in, and the most luminescent, I can say that. Pearl, most luminescent pearl, you can almost see that depth within it. And so it's layer after layer of this that comes
and there's a
in.
word, iridescence, that goes with the luminescence, which is the rainbow play of colors. Yes.
Yes. So I had that image of how deep that is within a pearl.
Yes. And you know, when we have the TV show, we're selling, and it's quite commercial. Like in Atlanta, when the show's on, the host is happily saying, you know, he's leaving soon, like buy them now. And you'll never see bargains like this. And in Australia, it's a bit more laid back, and we're talking nicely about them, and then the audience buys them. And in TV shopping, you give it back if you don't like it. You have like a 2-3 week time to look. So it's a great way of buying. But whenever the models or the show host ladies are wearing the pearls, they always not behave, but feel more regal almost. And there's something royal and transmittable about pearls. And a great hero of mine is Paramahansa Yogananda, and I always carry his picture with me. This picture was taken 1 hour before he passed away, when he left his body in Los Angeles by Maha Samadhi, and he gave a speech in the Biltmore Hotel, and he had said to his followers, I'm going on a journey tomorrow, wish me luck. And then he just dropped his body and passed away, and his body didn't corrupt and stayed 3 weeks completely uncorrupted. And when you go to his lake shrine at the bottom of Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, there is a houseboat, and on Saturdays between 10 and 12 you can meditate for 5, 10, 15 minutes inside. And he passed away in 1952, I think, but the energy is there so powerfully. It was the highest spiritual experience I ever had, to sit in a room of a dead master, ascended master, who ascended and passed away in the 50s before I even turned up. And he's always been around me since I woke up spiritually, I think. But you feel the energy. And then a friend went to women's retreat in Encinitas, California. Do you want me to stop video for a minute and then come back in?
You're back.
You're back. So. You're back.
Yes. Okay.
But I want to use this opportunity. This was Jesus stepping in. No, I want to use this opportunity to talk to you about your transformational moment when you were 22, and I'm going to nutshell it for people. You've talked about this on Swain's show, and I'll leave a link below for people to get that information. I'll leave also your higher self information, your higher self expo link below. But I want to talk to you about this moment of when you're 22 years old and you went through a transformation, because here's the nutshell version, here's the thumbnail version, is that David, 22, handsome and horny, we'll just say that. And he's off on the date with his lovely yoga instructor, and he's, you know, kind of crushing on her. And they go out for a date, and they're having dinner. And then literally the next morning, David wakes up and he's like, whoa, I see the world a different way. I am experiencing the world a different way. And you thought, you kind of really accredited it to her that she had given you a mystical experience, but she was more of a catalyst for the mystical experience. What else can you say about that moment right there that I missed or maybe misconstrued?
So I was drunk in a nightclub. She was selling flowers to patrons in the nightclub, and I was a sort of whiskey, disco, chase girls kind of 22-year-old. Scotch, whiskey, drugs, and girls, basically. And that was life. If you said you're going to have a spiritual experience, I wouldn't know what a spirit was or a spiritual experience, and didn't care for one and didn't know anything. But we, you know, I'd been through organized religion at boarding school, but that was it. And I asked for this young lady's number, and she said, I'm a vegetarian Buddhist, but I'll go to dinner with you. So we went, and she talked about her life, and I'd never really had vegetarian food, frankly. I mean, you know, I was sort of steak and whiskey kind of guy. And she talked about Vipassana and meditating and all these things. Then we said goodnight. Then I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I suddenly saw there was a life force through everything, and I knew there was a God. It was like a really deep knowing that there was an intelligence in every place. Just seeing ants, every life force, and flowers were growing and trees were bristling with life, and that's how it occurred to me, really. But I thought it was because she was like a holy woman. But I've subsequently learned, when friends of mine have woken up after dinner with me or whatever, weirdly, I say it's not me, it's the spirit in you that just chose to woke up now, and maybe I was a catalyst. Yeah, that's the nutshell version, if that helps or answers the question.
Yeah, I think that does a great job of answering it. And so you're saying that you were able to see the light, like you literally, the way you saw the world change, you could see the life force inside of things moving, and your understanding just shifted.
And before, I didn't know. I was agnostic. There might be a God, but I don't know what it is, but I'm too scared to believe there isn't, just in case there is. When I woke up, I knew there was a loving thing running the place. And a man, a woman, it's not I call it it because it's everything there is. And it was in everything and everybody. And I just felt like super connected. And I got really clearly, I remember writing a poem, that everything I do to you, I'm doing to me too. So everything I steal from you, I'm stealing from me too. It went like this. It wasn't a very well constructed poem, but it was kind of saying, everything negative I send out, I'm doing to myself, and everything positive I send out, I'm doing to myself. And there is only one of us. I couldn't have articulated it like that at the time, but all the goodies and all the baddies are from the same place. Like there's only one place to come from. And that was the big awakening for me. But it was more information and awareness. And so everything was like being Christmas Day all over again, every day, rather than a whole download of intellectual information. It was more a knowing, and then the ability to see the beauty in things like the ocean and trees and flowers and the park, and just noticing there were ants everywhere, for example. You know, life was everywhere. But the week before, I'd been in the office and somebody was talking about reincarnation, and a fly flew in or was in there, and I killed it and said, oh my God, I just killed Henry VIII. So I was very unconscious before, the week before, you know. So I didn't do much fly killing after that.
Well, and it's what I get from this is that like there was a rebirth, like it was a rebirth, like your spirit awoke in your body, and it was like clean. It was like, oh, I'm now integrated, like this, the frequency, the vibration of this woman who was on her spiritual path, it pulled your trigger, it pulled the cork, you popped, and it was like, oh, I've rebirthed. I spontaneously rebirthed. My soul is now awake inside my body. And this seems to be like that first step of your your journey of being a 5D life in a 3D world. Does that resonate when I say that?
Very, very much. And it was the internal desire to merge with the oneness, however possible. So say there's a conventional word, God. It's the easiest word to use on our planet. I wanted to be with God. When I was a kid, I always liked that George Harrison song, Now I Really Want to See You, My Sweet Lord. I liked the guitar playing and the music, and just liked the song. It always made me a bit homesick when I heard it. And I kind of feel that the homesickness was the longing to be attached to God, or oneness, or unified field, all the million words there are for it. And that's what was awoken in me, this sort of magnetic attraction. So I immediately went on a search, really, thinking it was an outside job. And if I went to India, I'd find God waiting around in some temple in some other place or country, rather than being the ants and the flowers already next to me now, and people, all the people. Yeah.
I have a question. With a lot of my clients, we talk about being an observation of what happened right before the occurrence of whatever that was, when they either got hits, psychic hits. Did you ever evaluate that you asked for anything before that happened? Were you aware in any way in your life that you had any desire that wasn't being fulfilled?
No. I used to think when we were in the chapel services at boarding school, I quite liked them, and I quite liked church and the feeling of being in an old sort of church, but not really. And when we were having dinner, I was thinking, I wonder if we're going to have sex after this date. I wasn't exactly thinking the highest thoughts of my life. So, and we didn't, and we weren't. But I didn't. I didn't really have any yearning at all. Actually, there was a very beautiful girl called Kate, and when we were allowed to choose our subjects at boarding school, there were girls in the last 2 years, not many. And when we were all choosing, I noticed this pretty girl chose religious education, so I did it. But I wasn't really into the religious education, and she already had a boyfriend anyway, who was a very good friend of mine. So that was all childish. But I'm trying to show that I wasn't really motivated by any yearning whatsoever. I didn't ask to wake up or expect to or anything. It was like a massive gift from God consciousness, just saying, right, mate, it's your turn. And then subsequently, everything made sense, and I realized I came to planet Earth specifically to be of service in whatever way life wants to use me, and kind of feel we're all being lived rather than living. So personal David will is really quite irrelevant. I might want Ferraris and pretty women or something, but really the higher self will say, it's not about the cash and prizes. It's about being here for the service to humanity. And it just turns out that this incarnation in particular seems to be 2020 showing us there's a massive amount of something to be done by the people who have come to be light workers. But just by being ourselves, I'm sure we're doing it. It's a bit like when we go and see the Dalai Lama. I kind of find it a bit boring because he does go on a bit, but his energy is so radiatingly divine and perfect that he could recite the phone book and it would have the same effect throughout. I'm so sorry to say boring, because it's not boring at all. And my partner's Buddhist, and I really don't mean to insult his holiness. I just mean there's an energy that comes out of beings that's more powerful than the words, really, in a way. And I feel that when I'm doing the Pearl show, before I always say a prayer to God and just say, you do the talking, old buddy, and I'll turn up, and let's transmit some loving energy under the guise of being a Pearl man, because we're really all conjugating the verb to love on this planet in a way. And when we're fearful, we're not very loving. And when we're loving, we're very loving, which is kind of what 5D must be like. I'm guessing that it's very great, full of grace and love and divine unity, really. I hope it's not boring, but it probably isn't. But Paramahansa Yogananda said consciousness was almost bored of being on its own and wanted to experience itself. So it split itself into zillions of things. that then play the game of remembering their divine origin and merging back. And that's the game everyone's playing. It's just easy to watch the evening news and get caught up in, which isn't a great idea to watch. There's better things to watch, but it's easy to get caught up in good and bad, you know. But really, there's just happening, and things are happening, you know.
Well,
Cosmic here.
I wanted to ask you, because so you had this awakening at 22, and you come from a line of pearl dealers, you know,
yes,
1830s. So were you doing pearls at that time? Like, what was the evolution of being like, oh, so now I'm awake, I'm suddenly awake, but didn't ask for it, didn't expect it, but now I'm awake. And was there a transition of being like, well, I'm going to work in the corporate world and share love wherever I go in the corporate world? Like, what was that progression from you, from being a very kind of shallow, self-serving 22-year-old into this awakened 22-year-old that now is like, oh, I guess I have the mission of love. I didn't know that before. How did your career look in that transformation?
Yes, and I've wanted to be a pearl dealer since like I was 10. I loved going to my dad's office in London where I grew up, and I love the people in the business. I love the pearls. So luckily, a very kind gentleman, Mr. Jerwood, told me that he would teach me. He had a pearl farm with my dad. They owned one in Australia. And he came to our house once a year when he visited England. He lived in Japan since 1953 and was married to a Japanese lady. And he said, when I was about 14 or 15, if you don't want to go to college, university, then come and learn pearls in Tokyo. So I did. And then I got to Australia by accident at 20 because someone offered me a job, and then woke up here at 22. So I didn't really, I didn't really, I was still quite selfish, and I thought I could find God through taking ecstasy and things like that. But I was continually doing programs. So I did Vipassana, that Buddhist meditation, for 10 days when I was about 23. Then it didn't work for me, so I'm sitting still so long. So I learned transcendental meditation. Somebody gave me the book of Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi. I met and went to a lecture of Shakti Gawain, who wrote a book called From Mill Valley in California, who wrote Creative Visualization. And I just started doing courses. I learned about rebirthing, which I didn't really know what that meant. And I think I was such a seeker of knowledge and truth and understanding that it just grew with me, that there was a more loving thing inside me wanting to come out. So at the end of Vipassana, you kind of sit and meditate, and for 7 days, you're watching your breath and watching the sensations from the top of your head to the tip of your toes and up again. And it's pretty boring and frustrating. I was there to please my girlfriend, not really because I wanted enlightenment, but at 23. But at the end, the last 3 days, they teach you metta, which is loving kindness, and you feel it in your heart, and you send it out to the room and to the city, and then to the country, and then to the world, and then to the universe. And the idea of sending love out sort of was taught to me, I suppose. And it just kind of dawned on me again and again. And then listening to all the Wayne Dyers and the Shakti Gawains and the Michael Singers and the Paramahansa Yoganandas, they basically said, we're here to love and be loved, and to be as loving and kind as possible. So it sort of didn't dawn on me so much as was within me and grew up. And then being in the corporate world, I worked for the pearl farmers for 20 years. So my job was to run offices in New York and Hong Kong and Sydney. And we sold to people like the buyer of Tiffany's and Harry Winston and Van Cleef and all the big high jewelry, Cartier, all the high houses in jewelry and all the wholesalers. And those people, I'm not saying they're unconscious, because they've all got their own spiritual paths, definitely. But we were arguing over the price of pearls more than is there a God and what's our job on earth. So we didn't get much to the meaning of life, I don't think. But I think it's more just being an example. And then if I every now and again, I'll say a comment about reincarnation, and some people are just interested, and then we get talking, and then everything goes deeper. But I don't feel it's like a job to wake people up. I think the God in them will wake them up and lead them to things, rather than to me to sort of rattle cages going, you're all asleep, wake up, guys. Like it's all sort of, people are perfect where they are, I think, in the grand scheme of things. And that took a long time, because I really believed in right or wrong for for decades and decades, and it's only in my 50s that I see that everything's perfect, you know, as it is, even with all its cruelty and horror, you know, that it's sort of the way things have to be, you know. And when I was 13, I dreamt I met Hitler in a dream, and I was hiding. We're Jewish in our family, but we were sort of educated Anglican. But I was a little Jewish 13-year-old kid hiding in a bush, and Hitler was there in his full uniform and mustache, and he said, "Get out from there." So I came out, and I said, "Why are you doing this to everyone?" And he said, "Oh, you don't understand now, but one day you will. It's just all part of the cycle of birth and death, and it will all make sense to you." But I was 13, remember, I didn't know what anything meant. And then he said, "Now get in that line," he said. So I did, and then I woke up. But I see now that that there's a sort of divine order to everything, because I immediately, when I woke up at 22, knew there was reincarnation. It was a fact of my life, whereas the day before I'd been teasing about Henry VIII killing flies and didn't believe at all. But that was a piece of information given to me. And if we're a soul perpetually remembering our divinity and going through these cycles, then whether I was the little Jewish boy in Auschwitz or Hitler, we're all sort of playing a role in a cosmic drama, as Yoganandaji calls it. And one of his sayings and tapes is "Awake in the cosmic dream and realize this is all a dream of divine dreaming itself, really." But it's not, it seems to be happening, but it's all happening like a big dream in the consciousness of divinity. It's getting a bit deep and complicated here.
No.
I can see it, but I can't explain it properly.
Well, I think that's because it's beyond words. Miss Linda?
Mm-hmm. So you've talked about being a CEO and well, in some of your other interviews. And with this awakening that I think is occurring across the world, and CEOs are awakening, and everything down to somebody that is in the shipping department can be awakened. What roles can we take in the corporate world to help facilitate this?
My friends who are waking up, and it's really new to them, and they're running businesses, and they're very, budgets on Monday and KPIs, key performance indicators, and all this stuff is their way of talking. I send them to energy healers, and I say things like, take this on blind faith, but something's going on for you. Go and see so-and-so who moves energy, and just go and lie on a table and be covered in crystals or whatever, but just observe the energy in you moving, and you'll notice something in your heart is awakening, because you're in your head, and your journey is going to go to your heart. And when your heart's operating, you just become more loving, and this feeling that you've got that you don't really understand is really about becoming a loving being. And then for the people who are open to talking about God, or any word like God, the field, the consciousness, divinity, blah, 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 I say, what's your version of God? And then some people have an old man with a beard, or they don't have one at all. And I say, if there was a God, what would you like it to be like? Would you like it to be unconditionally loving energy, or sunshine, or, the galaxy, the whole shooting match? And then look for it to turn up in your life. So if it's kindness and love, just look for love and kindness to come to you. And why not start talking to it, I say, and say, this crazy guy David says you exist, I don't think you do, or I don't know what you are, but for fuck's sake, come and talk to me. And I say, you can swear, you can be yourself. It's so unconditionally loving. It is you, and it won't mind how you talk. So you can say, because you only talk to God when you have a car crash and you don't want the police coming to the accident, or you're drunk driving and you don't want the police testing you, or in that moment, human beings go, God help me, if you get me out of this one, I swear I'll never drink again, or I won't take drugs, I won't beat my wife, or whatever your thing is, And so I'm saying to people in corporate people who are a bit suit and tie, I'm saying, like, try and make a dialogue with the universe, whatever word it is, and just ask for it to show up. It might be butterflies or 5-cent pieces or poems or books, but it will communicate back because it's a bit lonely and it needs talking to. So it's, for me, it's the getting people to make a relationship with the divine in a really childlike, simple way, and to understand that their heart is a sort of operation center, whereas they're all in the head before the kind of awakening. And I think that's what's going on globally, that the guy in the mailroom and the CEO, everyone is waking up and in some level remembering their divinity. But it's so freaky at first to people and weird and doesn't fit in. So when I woke up, I decided the whole staff, which wasn't very many people working with me, they should all become vegetarian, because vegetarianism was good. So that in various ways, they said F off pretty quickly. Like, you're not telling us, we're here to sell pearls. We're not here to be told what and how to eat. But I was arrogant, and I thought what I had, they should have, because it was so good for me. And you always want to share it, but it's not appropriate for other people. It's like you talk to a Buddhist and put them in a room with a born-again Christian, and they're both right, but they aren't right for each other. So my way is better than yours, and so on and so forth. And that's human nature, of course, that the ego wants to run the show and the heart just wants to let it rest. And, you know, so, but for me, it's a relationship with the divine, number one, and a kind of any activity that opens your heart is number two. And number three is to be more in nature, because it's like, it's neutral and lovely. So those three things are very non-invasive and non-threatening, but they do their own thing. And then the awakening energy inside a human being is doing the job anyway. So it's leading everyone to their own experience anyway. And when I dropped the fact that I had to awaken anyone, they had the awakener inside them as a thing. It made life easy then, because then it's the most important thing that I think we've heard today was, Kat, when you said, we realize our job is to be ourselves and everything unfolds. And then life is so grand, because we just sort of do a Joseph Campbell who said, follow your bliss. So my life is pearls. I love the things, and they're always new and iridescent and exciting. And if I just stick to selling pearls, everything will work out. And then somehow Karen invites me on her radio show, and then Zane invites me, and you invite me. And if I'm meant to talk about other things outside of pearls, it will just come, you know. It's good, which is great, because we can be quite lazy and don't have to do anything except breathe and show up for life. Like, get out of bed and get dressed.
Sure. And I mean, coming back to Linda's question, I feel like one of the things that you're doing is like, you're just kind of gently baiting people with little questions to get them thinking and get them their mind going. And I think that some people are waking up and some people are fighting it and clamping down. I see there being a duality really expressing itself, because some people do not want to wake up and they're going to hunker down, and other people are like, oh, everything's hitting me left and right, I guess I need to transform. You hop in, Linda. I know you got another question for our lovely David here.
I do. Mine's on the business side, because we haven't had someone to really talk about how this shows up in business. Do you think that as corporate CEOs and people investing in those companies become more awakened, that the priorities and what defines success in a company will start shifting from just the bottom line to other measurements?
I don't really know, but one of the most interesting people I've observed is Steve Jobs, who dropped out of university, I think, and went walking bare feet and went and lived in Japan and studied Zen, and was a pretty enlightened human being, who then, by believing in himself and his products, made what, I don't know if it still is, but it was the #1 capitalized company in the world recently. So that is the ultimate, if you had a Harvard Business School or whatever school of how to make an amazing business and be the most valuable company on the planet, it would be the Apple story. But yet Steve Jobs was like he did LSD, he was into the 60s, he loved the Beatles, he did yoga and meditated, he died as consciously as he could, and with his cancer, that was an amazing journey. And he changed the way, I suppose, we all communicate as a result of his telephony skills. and the things he did. So I think if
Hey there. We just wanted to take a very quick moment out and let you know that yes, not everybody feels the same way about Steve Jobs as our friend David Norman does. There's a lot of controversy, a lot of opinions, a lot of even scandal around the man that was Steve Jobs. It's okay. We all have different perceptions. We all have different experiences. We all have different beliefs. If you're feeling super triggered, just click above, the little link above, and it will take you to a video about triggers, echo chambers, and learning how to live and let live. All right, that's all we want to say. David, get back at it.
he did. So I think if the CEOs and the current corporate world people wake up, and Karen, our friend, mutual friend Karen Swain, says that a lot of people have come here to get in positions of power and then to awaken to do the job. And she mentions as an example the prime ministers of New Zealand and Canada, who are in their early 40s, and they're obviously quite charming, brilliant people, but they might or they might not be spiritually awake, we don't know. But then they're running whole countries. I don't know, it'd be a bit of a dilemma if you woke up and you're the chairman of British Petroleum, Esso, you know, those sorts of big oil companies, or you run big pharmaceutical companies, and you're really judged by your profits and things. But I think the power, like Gaia's waking up, the people are waking up, and I think the market is more powerful as a mechanism, and so it will force the CEOs to change their products. A bit like when Coca-Cola suddenly came out with new Coke, but it was ugly and people wanted old Coke, and they said we made a mistake, and they went back to old Coke, and the market just rejects things. But when I'm just in despair about anything and get out of oneness into duality, I look at the new children, like my friends and friends with grandchildren and children, the babies and the children, like these kids who are like Mozart's at 4, and they win America's Got Talent, and they can barely put their clothes on and eat their own food with a knife and fork, but they can win America's Got Talent by ventriloquism or music or singing. And there are so many, I mean, that's the arts, but the gifted galactic children who are pouring onto the planet, and they're going to be the market, and they probably just will en masse not want, maybe they won't want pharmaceutical products and pills, they'll want essential oils and massage and crystals or whatever, you know. And I kind of feel there's a mass awakening for the whole species, which will shift the old-fashioned thing that we've been in since the Industrial Revolution, where it's a carrot in front of a donkey and a whip going, get a Maserati because your mini car isn't good enough, or, you know, get a 7-bedroom house because that 2-bedroom house is for losers. Or it's like this advertising that you've got to be bigger and better, and this first for profits, you know. I was amazed in Japan. There are companies there with 1,000-year plans. They've got 100-year plans, they've got 1,000-year plans, and they don't really care about the profit. They care about the turnover and keeping everyone employed, and the CEO is paid maximum 7 times the lowest paid worker, but usually it's much more, what's the word, you equal, but it's all the sameness. And so it does already exist in some models, but I think it's coming. That's the sort of 9-hour version answer to your question. Sorry it was so long.
No, I think that's great, because I think what we're talking about is that the consumers ultimately are going to be, and those who are investing in companies and choosing who they invest in are probably, the shift is going to take place by them pressuring the CEOs, by them pressuring the boards, by them choosing to take their purchasing power, their money elsewhere. And again, it comes to those in charge can choose to fight it, or they can choose to shift what those priorities are that they support within their company.
And it will start with things like most people being sick of the fact that there's a lake the size of Texas full of plastic in the Pacific.
Yes.
I think. And they'll say, we do not want plastic bags and plastic bottles, for example. And so supermarkets will just say, we don't have plastic bags, and water companies will say we can only do glass, because people will boycott it en masse one day. And I think there's that sort of pressure that will will get through.
I think
And
that I like this idea though of CEOs having mass awakenings. And we just talked to Mary Rodwell last week, who's all up in the Star Children story about how the Star Children are coming in, they're still connected, they have regular
Yes.
experiences, whether it's astral or in their body. It's just normal for them. This place is what's not normal, that other stuff is normal. And I just love the idea of this frequency, this vibration going out, and then people having, like you, having a spontaneous awakening. So that gives me, again, you just being yourself, you doing your thing, it can create a spontaneous awakening. And how great it would be to see that awakening on that corporate level, where someone realizes, oh my God, I've been raping the earth for money and I just can't do it anymore. And I just love that as a vision. And I know that one of Linda's questions that she had that I really would like you to get to is that sometimes things go really, really wrong in order to make something go right. And because we have like 20, 25 minutes left of talking with you, I just want you to explain what that means, because right now for people, they experience things going really, really wrong. Like everyone's like, 2020 is a monster, it's eating me. You know, like there's just all those memes about how 2020 is just the worst thing. And then people who are embracing change, who are embracing letting go of control and surrendering, not to make it light or diminish anyone's story or experience, but there is a point of transformation. And I would just like for you to talk about what it means for something to go really, really wrong in order for it to go really right.
Well, and I must honor my friend Carolyn Mace, who is a friend because she's mad about pearls, and we met at one of her seminars, and I gave her a pearl, and we got on like a house on fire, and she invited me to her home in Chicago, and she came to visit me in Las Vegas during the jewelry show. And it was her story of everything going wrong, and her sitting on a bus in Moscow in communist times, telling a Buddhist monk all her troubles. And he turned to her and said, maybe everything up until now has gone wrong so that one thing could go right. And she said she never complained again about life after that. It was such a lesson. But you know, you're a psychic, right, Linda, among other things. So when people come to the psychics, and when I go, it's like love, life, money, health. It's three big issues for humans, really. And love life is a really good way of talking about this. So when you've lost your love, you're hating life, and your heart's broken, and nothing's going right. And you might mourn it for a week, 20 years. It's a long process, and your heart's broken. When you meet the next Mrs. Right, you're so happy that you're free, or Mr. Right, or Miss Right. You're so happy that the last thing didn't, I mean, this is said at 57 years old, so it's not quite good for you if you're watching and you're 18 or 22. I don't mean it now. But if you go forward to me being 57, when you've lost your love and you're dying of pain, and you're playing every song by Rod Stewart, the first cut is the deepest, and I'll try to love again, and all those songs that, you know, are about lost love. When you meet your next love, you think, oh wow, I'm so glad I broke up with there so that I'm free to be with you. You realize, but if I said that to myself when in the middle of the breakup, and then say things like, there are other fish in the sea, you want to stab the person in the eye for saying there are other fish in the sea, because you don't want to hear it. But the truth is, that had to go wrong so that you could be with Miss Right, you know. And if you're in a job you hate and you get fired in COVID's, it's not funny if you haven't got enough to eat. I mean, that's no laughing matter this year. And it's frustrating and it's horrible. And if you're in lockdown, like in Melbourne, Australia, and various cities, it's a really shitty time, I know. But if there's some greater purpose to it all, and you do have an awakening, and you do get a different job, or you write that book you always wanted to write, or so on and so forth, then, and for humanity to reset so that we're not actually killing the earth and so on and so forth, if the species had to suffer like crazy for a few years so that it could wake up to a brighter future for the next 1,000 years, we'd see that with hindsight many years on. But in the midst of it, we can't see it. And that for me is the answer to things going wrong so that they're secretly going right. And I've got another saying, which is relax, God's in charge. But for non-believers, that's pretty annoying. but the divinity is in charge, and it shut us down for whatever reason, so that something new can come out. Like the earth must be so loving life, Mother Earth, that there's no planes flying all over the place all the time, and there's not boats everywhere and just stuff. It's like the mother is able to replenish someone. And so if that was the only thing to come out of it, it's great. But for me, without trying to piss people off, 2020 has been by far the best year of my life, by miles. Like if you said, right, you can only live 1 year, it would be 2020. But I was loved when I was married to my beautiful wife, Anne, and I love our children, Hannah and Genevieve, and I love my life, and I loved waking up, and I love many, many things. But 2020 has been really a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant year. But it hasn't gone quite according to plan, that's for sure.
You also didn't resist it, you leaned into it, and that's what made the difference. And I want Linda to hop in with another question, because I've got a question I'm dying to ask, but I want Linda to ask.
And I'll answer quicker from now on, sorry.
Yeah, well, I think we only have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah,
so I want to make sure that we'll... Actually, for me, I think you've also talked about surrender and grace, and I guess for me, part of that is trust. And it's the trust that you've talked many times about being one, and that we are one, and that there is something, a greater purpose or greater plan that we're in. And part of me is the fear, I think, comes from forgetting that oneness and feeling separation. And if you were to talk to someone who is going, well, that's easy for you to say because you're the head of a company and you're here and you're you, but I'm dealing with this, what would you say to them?
I would say,
your pearl of wisdom.
I would say, get a little booklet and write down the coincidences that have happened in your life as proof that the oneness is working behind the scenes anonymously. So you thought of Linda and she suddenly telephoned you and said, how are you, honey? And you hadn't heard from her for a year. Or you thought of Kat, but you went to school with him and then you found him on a radio show or something. And everybody's got these woo-woo, no moments in their life, which is the oneness talking to them all the time. And I would say ask for proof, ask for signs, ask for the oneness to come into your life when you lose heart, and be demanding of it. And like in Jerry Seinfeld, when they go, what do you want? And just be like a New Yorker. They're so demanding, New Yorkers. I love them. And I've had a lot to do with New York City and love it. And there's a resilience and a strength and an in-your-face rudeness that British people don't have. But it's lovely. But be like a New Yorker and say, all right, show up. Everyone's talking about you, oneness. Fucking come here and be one with me. Ask for it. That's what I'd say. Because the universe responds to being asked, and it wants to be asked, and it's ever awake and ever present. So it really is here for you. I'd say to them, and they're going, nothing's showing up, and I'm hating life. I'd say then ask for help and get a move on, and don't do it only when you have a car crash or you're drunk driving or you want, just do it. But maybe don't necessarily ask for just the cash and prizes like winning the lottery. It might be better to just say, can you give me everything I need, please? Which is a better thing to ask for than everything I want, because who knows what we want, really? Otherwise, we'll all be driving around in red Maseratis crashing into each other.
And what you need will bring you what you want. If you can tune into what you really need, which is connection, alignment, love, wholeness, the things we want tend to redefine and realign on their own, because we're no longer separate. We're in one accord, and we're not resisting seeing that as other. I'm over here, that's over there. When you have connection and alignment, we realize that thing I want is already part of me, and the fight it starts to die because you realize you're already connected. I'm gonna ask my question. We've got you for like 7 more minutes at the most. I want to know, what is you have a Pleiadian Awakening group, and I want you to be able to talk about that. Why do you have a Pleiadian Awakening group? What's it mean to you, and what is the offering, the mission of that group?
So I went swimming this morning, and I was driving home to have a shower from the beach, and I said to the oneness, hey, give me some help for my talk. I want to, do the talking for me today. And the song came on, Bring Me a Higher Love. It was Whitney Houston's version of Bring Me a Higher Love. I can't sing to save my life. So the Pleiadian group, I just woke up one day during COVID and decided to start a group of people who are into galactic consciousness, because I've always known since when I was 35, I looked up at Venus and said, I'm not coming back. I'm going to stay on Earth this lifetime. And I thought, God, what's going on here? And my galactic consciousness really grew from there, where I kind of understood what your guest said, that we're all star beings and we're all from somewhere else. And we're all here experiencing 3D, because this is the planet of free choice where we can. So I just spontaneously decided to start a group. And because I've read books like I'm a Pleiadian, Get Me Out of Here, or various Pleiadian books, and various star being books, I just thought, we're all awakening. Let's call it Pleiadian Awakenings. And I invited my friends who are into star consciousness to join, and then they invited friends, and it sort of became it's very small, but it just grew of its own accord. And then Karen helped me ask for some guest speakers to come and speak, and I've asked some people. And recently, whenever I switch on Facebook or YouTube, there's a lady called Laurie Ladd in San Rafael, California, and she keeps popping up and 100,000 people are watching her. So I just wrote to her and said, would you come to our Pleiadian group? And she's going to come tomorrow, which is Monday in Australia, and she's going to come and speak to us. And we have invited speakers, and we're just trying to raise our own inner consciousness. And then we've got all these questions about duality, of course, and everything that's going on, vaccinations and masks and all the naughty topics that polarize people. So it's a group to talk about all that stuff, but basically to remember our divine galactic origin.
Fantastic. All right, well, we have got just winding down to the last 5 minutes here. Is there anything else at your heart, pearls of love that your heart would like to share with the people, with your new friends here on Third Eye Salon?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on Third Eye Salon. It's been really, really lovely to be with you. And I never know what's going to come out of my mouth, and it just sort of streams out. So it's really lovely to be able to share any kind of philosophical thing. But I just wish everybody masses of love really out there, and say that it's all going to be okay, and we are divinely protected. We've all got angels, we've all got guides, we've all got inside us a higher self that we can ask for help. And I'm a really great believer in asking it for help, and asking it whatever name we have for it, and whatever honoring of the sacredness of this grace is, that we can all say a version of what do you want, but how can I serve you, the light, the grace best? I'm here to do it, and you run my life, and I'll show up and be here for you. And that's my now philosophy. I think from now till death, I'm a servant of the grace, rather than how can I fulfill David's fears and needs and wants. They're sort of irrelevant. So we're kind of going from me to we, which was a Muhammad Ali poem. He said me, we, and he was a great hero of mine as well, because he stood up for. He said, he actually said, no Viet Cong ever called me the N-word, and I'm gonna not go and fight Viet Cong when my battle's here in America, where we don't have civil rights. And he lost his heavyweight title, but for 5 years was in the wilderness. And then the Supreme Court said, no, you don't, on religious grounds, you didn't have to go to Vietnam. And then he won the title back from George Foreman, who was a 21-year-old crusher, and he beat him and won. And then George Foreman went into 2 years of depression and emerged a minister of God. So it showed me, that whole story showed me that everybody's on a massive journey, but we is everything.
Priceless. That was perfect. All right. Thank you, David Norman.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kat and Linda, and all the audience at home. Thank you.
An absolute delight. All right, everyone. Thank you. That was David Norman.
Thank you, everyone.
We will have his information below. And please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that we can stay connected with you. Take care. We love you. Be good to yourself. Bye.